Hello, Bucks fans. Welcome back to Bucks Latest, presented by fanarch.com. I'm your host, Dean Simon. And on this episode, we're going to focus on a little bit of a happier start, just appreciating what we have in the incredible Giannis Antetokounmpo, who kept his 7-year streak of all NBA first-team appearances alive this season after putting up about 30.4 points, 12 rebounds, 6.5 assists, shooting 60% from the field. I don't think anybody else in the history of the league has done that, so shout out to Giannis Antetokounmpo. While he's still wrapped up in all these trade rumors, he's stoking the flames a little bit on social media by saying that Steph Curry is the best player of all time, by saying all this other stuff. Giannis Antetokounmpo is just still an absolute delight to watch on the basketball court every single night, because no matter what, that he's going to give 110%. He's going to do everything for his team, no matter what jersey he's wearing. He's going to give it all for his team, and that's what you love in a guy like Giannis, who he will never back down from the fight. So shout out to Giannis Antetokounmpo, and of course this is going to further drive his trade stock up, being a guy that's made 7 All-NBA first-team appearances in a row. Just unbelievable stuff from the Greek Freak. But moving forward, not going to be talking as much about Giannis trade packages and stuff today. There will be a segment later on that will dive into that sort of thing. But first, looking towards the future a little bit for the Milwaukee Bucks, as it's been reported that the Bucks have worked out Alabama's Mark Sears, the 6'1" guard. He really reminds me of Jalen Brunson. He's got a lot of Jalen Brunson in him, and it's not just because of his left-handed shooting stroke. He's just got so many similar qualities, whether it's his playmaking, his ability to drive to the basket, bump off defenders, and, because he has a stocky frame. He bumps off defenders. He likes getting to his spots in the painted area, in the mid-range, hitting little fadeaways. Mark Sears is an incredibly polished and talented offensive player. His efficiency this past year for Alabama in his, I guess you could say his 5th season, his senior season, his efficiency kind of cratered compared to what would be his 4th year, where he led the nation, or not the nation, he led the SEC in effective field goal percentage. It was a little bit over 60%. But again, this year he averaged about 18 points, 5 assists on about 49% effective field goal percentage, which his 3-point percentage dropped from about 43.5 2 years ago to about 34. Just didn't really like that kind of deal with a guy like Mark Sears, who took the same amount of shots, got the same kind of shot quality, but the shots just didn't fall. And it's still completely evident that he is an uber talented offensive player, but standing at 6'1" with about a 6'2" wingspan, the size is definitely going to be a problem at the next level, and that's why people have him slated mostly as a possible late second round pick. It's kind of wildly different depending on people's draft rankings, whether he can sneak in as a late first round pick, as he's going to be, maybe if he's going to be in the middle of the second round, who knows. But Mark Sears definitely has a lot to offer on the offensive end, but it's just a matter of consistency, a matter of efficiency, and a matter of size on the defensive end. One thing I will say, though, for a guy like Mark Sears, for a guy who is lacking in stature a little bit, he still makes up for it by getting in passing lanes, just doing stuff that you like small guards to do if they're not great one-on-one defenders. And he is a great defender off the ball. He plays a great free safety, if you will. And that's evidenced by a career, I believe, 1.3 steals average throughout his college career. He hit about 1.6 in one of his years at Alabama, I believe. But anyways, whether the Bucks want to take a chance on him is an interesting question, and I feel like it hinges on Giannis's position a lot, because going forward in the future, let's say the Bucks take Mark Sears with the 47th overall pick. You want to have that guy developing next to Giannis in the pick and roll, hopefully. If you believe that Mark Sears can turn into something on the offensive end for the Milwaukee Bucks, you would want him pairing with Giannis in the pick and roll, trying to get his playmaking up a little bit while maintaining that edge that he has as a very aggressive 6'1", 185-pound point guard that can get to his spots, that can fill it up by any means. He led the nation led his conference in free throw percentage one of his years prior to stopping over to Alabama, and he has shown time and time again previous that he is an incredibly efficient player, but this was just a down year this last year and kind of had his draft stock fall a little bit. But hopefully Mark Sears can turn things up. He had a great draft combine that did a lot to get hope back into him as a prospect, as a player, a future NBA player. So The Bucks looking at Mark Sears, it's an interesting prospect, an interesting decision, if you will, if they end up taking that guy at number 47 overall. And I guess we'll just have to see how that all shakes out, depending on if there's a massive draft day trade for Giannis where the Spurs happen to swap over picks number 2 and 14, as has been reported recently, because the Spurs have been a pretty big destination for Giannis in recent talks, saying that he could pair with Victor Wembanyama. They could make the best defensive front court in league history, and it won't really necessarily be close if Giannis and Wemby were to team up. And if Giannis were to head there, the Spurs would have to give up that possibly the number 2 overall pick, the number 14 overall pick. Probably not a guy like Stephon Castle, but maybe Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes might be involved in a deal like that. Malachi Branham, one of the Champagny twins. It's very, very possible that the Bucks can pretty easily stock up on great draft capital, good young prospects by bringing in Vassell, bringing in Keldon Johnson, and having picks number 2 and 14, where they'd probably take a guy like Dylan Harper. They'd probably take who would be hanging around 14? Probably Malawach would not be around 14 at that point anymore because of his great draft combine recently. But the Bucks would be able to recoup assets very, very quickly in that case. And Giannis to the Spurs is probably the most interesting trade that we've seen in recent memory, just because of the sheer potential. I feel like there have been other blockbuster trades recently, like obviously Luka to the Lakers, but Giannis to the Spurs, it's just so eye-opening because of all the possibilities and the instant change that brings to that franchise that's stepping into a new era that brought on a new head coach for the first time in 29 years after Popovich decided to move to a front office role. It's a lot of questions that would have to be answered for the San Antonio Spurs in that regard. But for the Milwaukee Bucks, bringing in, again, possibly a guy like Dylan Harper, whoever would be around 14 overall, and possibly Mark Sears at the number 47 overall pick, things could be looking up. Right now, things look bleak. But in the next few years, who knows what decisions the Bucks front office is going to make. But if it has to do with Giannis taking a trip to the West Coast to join the San Antonio Spurs and getting back those kinds of assets, we'll just have to see what turns into that. But speaking of Bucks players possibly taking a trip to the Western Conference, Brook Lopez has been in the news recently because ESPN's Bobby Marks took the time to say that Brook Lopez might be fitting pretty good for a team like the Warriors, for a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, who both of those teams in recent memory have yearned for a stretch big that can block shots and could be at least a decent rebounder around the basket. And Brook Lopez, of course, fills all of those categories, even heading into what will be his 18th season next year. Brook Lopez will surely be a great option for either of those teams and will possibly be pursued by either of those teams if their first options don't necessarily come to fruition. But Brook Lopez shot about 37% from 3 this past year, 50% from the field. He did everything the Bucks asked him to, and whether it was consistent or not, and there were some instances where hair could be pulled out of the head based on his lack of ability to grab boards or offensive boards at least, or just be a factor in rebounding and boxing out. Issues sort of came up during the year, but going forward, if Brook Lopez were to take his talents to Golden State to perform as a pick and roll partner for Steph Curry so he could space out and just have all of this offense be created just from him standing on the three-point line, same thing going for the Lakers with either Luka or LeBron being his pick and roll partner. He could definitely add a lot of versatility to a team of that nature that's trying to compete with older stars. And we'll just have to see what Brook Lopez offers to a team of that nature if he were to make a move. But it's not determined yet whether Brook will leave. You would imagine that he would, because he's probably looking for a decent payday and to be in a situation where he could win. And of course, with all the Giannis rumors and everything escalating to such a point, maybe he doesn't feel confident in Milwaukee anymore as that destination where he could win another title. So going forward, look for Brook Lopez to be approached by these Western Conference teams, by these possible contenders going into next year. Who knows if the Warriors are really going to be a serious contender heading into next year. But, it remains to be seen. But, yeah, that's all I have today. I will see you guys in the next episode, and go Bucks.